Then you should have a little button that says, got it. All right. So we did just, while we were all chatting, I just disappeared while we were chatting here before the beginning of class, we decided we would like to do really a shoulder and low back focus for our practice today. So if possible, we're going to start seated. And you might be seated on blocks, or I mentioned you might also, if you have a couch or a chair available, you might want to sit on that if that feels a little bit better. And we're going to find our way to this grounded space. If you're on blocks, that counts as the floor. So we're bringing the floor to us. That's our grounding as we're seated on blocks. If you're on a chair, you might even, or a couch, you might even sit back so you feel the back space of your spine against that. That can also be very grounding. And as you're settling in, maybe taking a few of those deeper inhales, those longer exhales. And those longer exhales, really just settling into the weight of the body where you do feel connection. Maybe it's feet, legs. We mentioned the spine. Just noticing where you're connected to the earth. And once your settling breaths feel complete, just inviting the body to breathe itself. No effort to breath. And we'll take a moment here just to notice what might be arising, what's present for you. Maybe you're having sensation in the body, the physical body that you're noticing or is gaining your notice. Perhaps you're having thoughts or emotions. Or just acknowledging those sensations that are present without judgment. Maybe inviting a little bit of curiosity about those sensations. Just about a minute here in silence to notice what's present for you. And then bringing some awareness to your breath. And as we're seated here, noticing that path of the breath. So where do you feel that inhale travel into? Is it, friction through the nose, the throat? Do you feel some expansion into the chest, maybe down into the belly? And when you exhale next, where do you feel that exhale release from? Maybe there's a sense of release or that sort of inflating, deflating feeling. Maybe we feel the friction as it's leaving the body through the throat, through the nose, or the warmth of the breath as it's leaving. So noticing for yourself here the path of the breath, breathing into expansion, maybe exhaling into ease or release. And as we move through our practice today, taking a little extra time, maybe to notice that breath. As we know, noticing breath and maybe even expanding spaces with that breath can help draw that life force energy, that prana, to that space. It can be very healing to particular spaces, or maybe very opening to really tight spaces. If you happen to have your eyes closed, we're going to go ahead and blink those eyes open. If you need to change something about your seat, feel free to change. I'm going to keep moving here with the sun as it's as it's crossing behind me. We're going to do a little bit of shoulder warm up. And this idea of thinking about the space from the ear all the way down to the pointy part of your shoulder. So we're going to think about this space here at the beginning of class. We're going to start with really heavy arms, but if possible, arms hanging out down by your side. Now, if you're on blocks, your arms may not hit the floor, and that's okay. So with those arms down, we're going to take our gaze over our right shoulder, and we're just making note here. What's that range of motion like? And then we'll come back through center and look over the other side. Sometimes we might have sensation of tightness, maybe looseness if you're lucky, and perhaps a little bit of sensation of tenderness. So we're just noting what's our range of motion here at the beginning of class. How far can I look to the right and to the left? If you'll take your right hand behind your back, we're going to drop the left ear to the left shoulder, and we're going to use our chin to look up and down. We think about our chin really being that marker, looking forward and then moving it down. Now, as always, we're measuring this with sensation. So if it feels a little too much, you can just leave your ear towards that shoulder or chin towards the shoulder without moving back and forth, releasing some of these side neck muscles, scalenes, and that big one, the sternocleidomastoid, big name and a big muscle in the neck. Come on back through center. We'll switch sides. So left hand comes behind, right ear to right shoulder, and doing that same idea, perhaps moving. You're going to see me actually stay still. I'm getting kind of messages here, the really tight part of my neck. So I'm just going to keep my ear towards the shoulder. You might keep chin towards the shoulder. You might move through it. It seems like a pretty small move, or maybe a simple move is a better way to say that. But what we're doing is releasing some things underneath the shoulder blade, that top ridge of the shoulder and neck muscles. We're going to come on up through center and very gentle and small shoulder rolls. So as we're rolling, we're keeping it pretty small. Might have a lot of feedback there in the shoulders, that snap, crackle, and pop. Go ahead, reverse it, coming back in the opposite direction, smaller circles. And then when you're ready, letting those shoulders melt away from the ears, we're going to take the right hand to the floor. And we're just going to lean into that side. This is all relative. So we might get maybe a few inches. We might get the elbow to the floor. Once we're in the space that makes sense for us, we're going to look down at that arm. The opposite arm, left arm, has some choices. It can slide behind the back, can reach up and overhead. It can even reach all the way over to that right side. Keeping gaze towards the floor, that's less strain on the neck. We're stretching that side body. We'll rise up and we're going to switch sides. We go over to the left side, deciding how far we can go. That makes sense. And deciding what we want to do with that right arm. Looking down at the floor, we might lift that arm up overhead, or it slides behind the back. You can even think of that expansive breath. Where is that breath traveling into? Is it into that side rib cage? We're going to rise back up. We're going to take arms out into a T, palms face up for this first part. And then we're going to turn palms down or to the back. So you might think about if we had a gigantic dial out here, we're just going to dial up and down as much as those wrists allow, as much as those shoulders allow, to release some of this shoulder space. Also through the forearms, great for carpal tunnel. So if you're working with that through those hands, particularly thumbs, this is a nice way to release some of that. We'll let our arms fall down, a gentle twist to the right. So using hands in your seated position, just gentle to start off with. So we're warming up that back. We're getting some feedback about what that back might be telling us. It might make sense to do less of a twist. It might make sense to do more, using the head to look over the shoulder. Less and more are never my favorite words. We might intensify it by looking over the shoulder. We might keep it more neutral. Come back through center and then twist opposite direction. Again, judging for yourself, a little more intensity, a little more neutral with the head, with the spine. And then we'll come on back through center. And I'm going to ask you just to change something about your seat. So maybe it's the cross of your legs. Maybe if you're seated in a chair, you extend your heels further away, they get closer. Your inner thighs might get closer. Your legs might get further apart. It's a great way to change your seat. We're going to reach our arms out into that T position, palms face up. And then inhale, letting arms reach up towards the ceiling. I'm going to keep mine in a letter V. You might have a little more parallel if your shoulders allow. When you exhale next, arms come down, we twist to the right. We inhale, rise back up through center, fingertips reach towards the ceiling. Exhale, twisting left. Hands always coming down on that twist, always rising through center up towards the ceiling. Exhaling, twisting right. Inhaling. Exhale, twisting left. We're going to do just one more of each of these, each side. Inhale, exhale, twist right. Inhale, exhale, twist left. We'll come back through center. We're going to actually come to hands and knees to do our cat-cow. If cat-cow feels a little bit better on knees by coming to a standing position and a little bit of rounding forward, that might be a good spot for you to go. The sunlight is just in the perfect line to see if I have neutral spine. So we're going to place those palms down. We might be on fists. We're going to let our belly drop. We'll look up towards the top of the mat, maybe even extend that chin up towards the top of the mat. As you exhale, press to round, thinking about spreading shoulder blades, tucking tailbone, looking through knees. We're going to move with our own breath. When the belly is dropping, when we're gazing towards the front of the mat, we're inhaling. When we're pressing to round to look through those knees, we're exhaling. Let's do 4 more on your own breath cycle. Noticing how this feels through belly and back. Always good stuff to loosen up that tight low back. Might even give a little emphasis into pressing into the top of the feet. That's even more grounding here in this space of cat-cow. When you're ready, finishing off in that neutral spine and coming down to elbows. So elbows and then palms are placed on the mat. The idea here is that I'm going to do what looks like maybe the smallest plank ever or push-up ever, but I'm going to let my heart drop towards the floor, and then I'm going to press my elbows and palms in to see if I can get that flat middle space between shoulder blades. And I'm just moving through as much as this range of motion will allow. So I'm dropping down towards the mat, pushing through elbows and palms. A couple of more here. We're not so concerned about belly, so it could be maybe rounding or falling to the floor. It's a gentle way to work some of these shoulder muscles without all the weight of a plank position. When you're ready, we're going to shift into your version of child's pose. So we might be able to get hips back towards heels. You might actually stay on elbows and just round the back. I'm going to stack my fists here just to make my microphone a little less muffled, but if you like, have your hands up towards the top of your mat. Breathing fully here into all of the space that we're creating. You might think about that inhale and exhale traveling into that expanded space. And then traveling back out of that expanded space as we release tension with that exhale and maybe other stuff. Doesn't have to be named. Could be energy, could be emotion from the area as we exhale. We're going to rise back up to tabletop. tucking toes if possible. So sometimes this doesn't feel so good on toe joints. And if that's the case, keep them pointed. We're going to press back and get a little bit of stretch through those arches. And then we're going to rock forward back into our tabletop. We'll press back and we'll rock forward. Now, if you want to make your rock a little bit bigger, walk your hands towards the front of the mat, and it becomes a little bit more like our melting heart and our knee plank. Good stuff to get mobility through those shoulders, through those knees. We're pressing through those heels, get that arch stretch, Achilles stretch. Do a couple more of these. Good stuff too for this torso, releasing some of the tight spaces around that rib cage that gets real sticky. That can cause some of that low back tightness. Rising back up, we're going to not do anything too fancy to get to the front of our mat in a standing pose, meaning we're going to find our mountain pose. So we'll come right up here. We're going to rock forward and back, and maybe inside and out of those feet to see if we can get a little bit more connection to the floor, and maybe noticing of our connection to the floor. And at some point, letting those feet land and building this from the soles of the feet up. So softening those knees, trying not to overgrip with thighs or buns. Rising up through the torso, long, tall torso. And letting your arms, really think about those being heavy and melting away from your ears. Palms might face thighs, they might face forward. And then if you will, shake your head no. Again, once again, noticing range of motion. Maybe it's a little further, maybe it's a little stiffer. Sometimes that happens. And letting head land in its neutral position. We are going to do a bit of twisting in this standing position. I'm going to turn and face you. You stay put at the top of your mat. The idea here is that we're going to let our hips move, and if our knees and feet need to shift as well. So we'll reach our arms out into that nice T position, palms facing up. As you exhale, twisting to the right. Hips will move, knees will move. They need to. Inhale, coming back through center. We're going to exhale, twist left, opening up torso, firing up shoulders. Inhale, center. Exhale, twist right. Inhale, center. Exhale, twist left. Let's get those arms involved, just like when we were seated. Now, as we come through center, think warrior one arms. As we exhale, we're thinking more T arms, palms facing down. So my left hand forward, right hand back as I twist to the right. I inhale through center. Exhale, right hand forward, left hand back as I twist to the left. Inhale, center. Exhale, twist. Inhale, center. Exhale, twist. We'll do one more time, each side. Inhale through center. Exhale, twist. Now this is really contracting those shoulder muscles. Inhale, exhale, and twisting through that torso. See if we can get some of that low back to release. Let's bring hands to heart. I'm going to go back to the front of my mat. We're going to start with our sun salutation. We'll take a nice deep inhale, reaching fingertips. As we exhale, might keep the knees soft. Maybe those hamstrings are ready for straight legs. Maybe they're never ready for straight legs. We're going to inhale into your halfway lift, either shins or thighs, or maybe even the floor. Exhale, release to look through those legs. See if you can get that head to fully release, looking through those legs as we reach arms wide on our inhale to rise back up. Exhale, hands come back to heart. Inhale, fingertips reach. Exhale, soft bent knees, maybe as we round forward. Inhale, coming into your halfway lift. Exhale, release to look through those legs. Arms reach wide. We rise back up. Exhale, hands come to heart. Let's do it 2 more times. Inhale, reach. Exhale, rounding forward. Inhale into your halfway lift. Exhale, release forward. Arms reach wide. We rise back up on that inhale. Exhale, hands come to heart. Last time. Inhale, fingertips reach. Exhale, soft bent knees, round forward. Now stick with me here. We're going to inhale into your halfway lift. We're going to do a little bit of knee bouncing. So I'm just going to bend and extend through those knees. Now I might have my hands on my shins. It might feel better on that back to have your hands on thighs. There may be some of you who have your hands on the floor, bending and extending. And we're just letting that head follow along with the torso. So as you bend, it's going to rise a little bit. As you extend, it's going to fall a little bit. We're getting those hamstrings fired up, a little bit stretched out. When you're ready, go ahead, just come into a forward fold, either straight legs or soft bent knees. We're going to grab hold of the opposite elbow. We come into ragdoll. So you might rock side to side if that doesn't make you dizzy. And maybe you just stay put right where you're at in that forward fold. Maybe even nod your head yes. Shake your head no. When you're ready, arms reach wide. We rise back up, reaching all the way towards the ceiling. We're going to exhale, hands come to heart. We're going to take a big step back with your right foot. This is a balance challenge, so be careful here. We're going to take a big step back, and we might find that we need to walk our front foot a little bit wider. Back foot can be planted, can also be parallel, I should say angle or parallel to the back of your mat. We're going to bend into the front knee, open those hips to the long edge of your mat. Keep hands low at your tailbone. So you can either clasp or hold on to a finger here. We're going to bend in and out of that front knee. So really our warrior two pose with our legs and torso, but a softening through the shoulders. If possible, you might even link and clasp your hands and push your knuckles down to the floor behind that tailbone. That's going to open up shoulders just a little bit. We'll bend into knee and land into knee, and then we're going to take a little lean in towards that knee. And you can think about the line from your ear to the outside ankle bone. So we're firing up that leg, pressing knuckles down to the floor if it's possible to clasp those hands. And then we're going to see if we can get just a little bit lower on the exhale. Maybe not. You might be prevented by some hard compression in the front of that thigh, and that's okay. When you're ready, we're going to rise up, and all we're going to do is turn toes in the same direction. Hands still behind back. We're going to go ahead, forward fold. We'll leave those hands behind back for this first round. You might also choose, if you can clasp hands, to send your knuckles up towards the ceiling. Big shoulder stretch there. We're getting good hamstring and inner thigh release as well. We're going to let those clasped hands come back to the tailbone. Use an exhale to come up. We're going to protect that back in these first few. Exhale helps you engage a little bit more of your core. We're going to make the back of our mat the front of our mat. So back leg, what used to be your back leg, is now going to turn toes to the back of the mat, bend in and out of that front knee. So we're just getting some feedback here. What's a good space? Is the stance wide enough? Are you getting enough out of it? Do you need to close it down because you're getting too much out of it? That's a possibility too. Land in the front knee. This time we're going to add in some arms. So think our traditional warrior two. We're going to gaze over our front fingers. And just noticing here, if you can lengthen through those fingers as if you're trying to reach the front and back of your mat. Hands come back down. We're going to take that lean. So leaning towards that front knee, or the bent knee might be a better way to say that. Perhaps you can clasp hands behind the back. I'd also keep hands right at the waistband. Leaning in there, getting that maybe a little extra with the next exhale to see if we can get a little deeper into that hip structure, if hip structure allows. Then we're going to rise up. Toes turned in the same direction this time. Hands come to hips. Exhaling to round down. We're going to let hands either rest on thighs, shins, ankles, or maybe they make it to the floor. Here we want to think more inversion. So I'm really hanging my spine off of my hips, including my head. So I might shake my head no. I might nod my head yes. We'll slide hands back to the crease of our thighs. This time, let's use an inhale That's the traditional breath to come up. We're going to turn toes back to the designated front of your mat. We're going to take one step forward to see if we can work on that balance. Give yourself a little wiggle, a little shake, maybe a bending in and out of the knees. Hands come to heart. We're going to take a nice deep inhale, reach towards the ceiling. Exhale, soft bent knees will round forward. Inhale into your halfway lift. This time we're going to step back into our plank and right into our down dog. Now we could be down on elbows. We could be down on knees. You could have a trip more of a, what we started with, which was more of like a quarter dog. And here I'm just bending in and out of knees, getting a little good stretch through the calf. I'm thinking more about heart getting closer to thighs than legs getting straight. So it's quite a possibility that you have soft knees and that you're pressing your heart closer to your thighs. We'll all come into a very brief plank. We're going to come down to knees. We're going to press back into our version of child's pose. So maybe hands reaching towards the top of the mat. You're going to see me once again stack my fists just for microphone reasons. You could also bring hands down by your side, breathing into that space of the back rib cage, back space of the heart. This is that pose we can return to for some rejuvenation, some release, and sometimes just to catch our breath. That's always a good space to be. One more full breath here. Then we're going to rise up, tabletop. Let's bring our right foot between the hands. And for some of us, that means we're swinging that sucker around and pulling it forward. Once we're here, we're going into a low lunge. So my back toes are going to tuck. I'm going to lift my back knee. Now, this can be really tricky if you do have a lot of hard compression in the front of the thigh. So maybe as you're stabilizing for balance, you bring your forearms to your thighs. You're pressing through that back heel. Might not feel very good, any of that. So it's okay to keep your knee down on the floor too. Low lunge, pressing through that back heel, getting some opening through the back of that leg. And then we're going to go ahead, plant that back foot, keep your hips aiming forward. We rise right up into our warrior one. So if it feels like that knee's a little caught, you can always bend in and out of it. If it feels like the arms reaching are a little intense, you can go into cactus arms. Hands again can come down behind your back, or you can always hold your hands right at your hips. Pressing through that back heel, getting some of that front of the thigh opening here. That can help release that low back. We'll bring hands to heart. We're going to take about a 6-inch step in with that back foot. Let's, if we can, have all 10 toes pointing towards the front of your mat, legs straightened. Now, if that feels very tricky for balance, you can turn that back foot out. When you're ready, we're going to hinge at the hips. We're going to take a bow forward. This is where we decide how far we want to go. Do we want to keep our head a little bit higher than the heart, or will our hamstrings and hip structure allow us to fold forward? If you have blocks handy, you want to reach for the floor, you're welcome to do that. Opening of the back of the thigh, pretty big opening of the back of the thigh, and that whole backside body. Check in with neck and shoulders. Is it possible to release them? You can always do that little check-in with a head shake no and a nod yes. We're going to bend into front knee, rise up, hands come back to heart. We take a step back to the front of our mat. Inhale, reach fingertips. Exhale, soft bent knees, round forward. Inhale into your halfway lift. Exhale into your forward fold. We're going to step back. This time we're going to go through our flow. So we're going to stay in our plank. I'm going to come down to knees. You can go full plank as we lower down to the earth. Inhale, low cobra or up dog, either one of those, and exhale, press back down dog. Your version of down dog for 5 full breaths. You can wiggle in that down dog. You can stay very still. You can soften knees. You might even draw or tuck your tailbone just a little bit here, drawing that belly in to get you a little more core engagement. On your next exhale, we're going to come down to knees. We're going to swing that left foot forward. Find your balance, find your blocks if you need them, and then lifting the right knee in a low lunge. You're reminding yourself maybe it makes more sense to have your forearms on top of your thighs. Stretching through that back heel. You're going to see me move a little bit here. My kneecap is caught. Old runner's knee. Cartilage did not wear evenly, and sometimes it gets caught in a very deep bend. When you're ready, plant that back foot, rise up, hips stay towards the front of the mat. We come into our warrior one. Arms can be up, cactus arms, down by your side. Pressing through that back heel, maybe even a little tailbone tuck. So we get that sensation really of the stretch happening through that front crease of the thigh. We'll bring hands to heart, take that little 6-inch hop in. Maybe all 10 toes can be pointing towards the front of your mat, or you might have that back foot at an angle. We're going to start to hinge forward with straight legs. We decide if it's possible to go lower, and we do that very gently, always checking in with sensation, making sure that our body is agreeing to where we're asking it to go this morning. Might shake the head no and yes. Excuse me. We'll bring hands back to heart. This is definitely a balance as we rise back up. Take a step towards the front of your mat. We're going to inhale, reach fingertips. Exhale, soft bent knees, round forward. Inhale into your halfway lift. Exhale, release forward fold. Let's go through our flow. We're going to step back into our plank. We're going to lower down to the earth. You can come up either low cobra or up dog. This time, instead of down dog, we're going to go into what is considered quarter dog. Knees on, arms reach towards the top of your mat. We see if we can get the forehead to either touch the mat or stack fists or a block. So our belly is dropping towards the mat. Arms are reaching towards the front of your mat. This looks like our melting heart, which we hold in our yin class. It's really releasing the front side of the torso and the arms and shoulder structure. We'll shift back into child's pose. I'm going to readjust my microphone here for a second. Hands here can be towards the top of the mat, fists stacked, block, or hands down by the side. 5 full breaths here. When you're ready, we're going to rise up. We are going into pigeon pose. Now, this might be a space where you actually rest on your back and cross your right ankle over the top of your left foot and number 4 pose. I'll demonstrate that here in just a second. If you're going into pigeon, which we know is sleeping swan from yin, we're going to bring the right knee forward and swing that ankle, if you can, around in front of the left thigh. You might have to walk that left thigh back. You might play here, because we're in a yang class, with walking fingers towards your knee. And then when you're ready, folding forward, staying put there. Or, as I said, I'm going to demonstrate number 4 stretch. You might come to your low back or rest on your back and cross your right ankle over the top of the left thigh and draw that knee in. A little longer hold here to open the outside IT band area, the glute area. A real often culprit of some of that low back tightness, along with hamstrings and tight thighs, front of the thighs. So noticing if it's possible as you're breathing in and out to bring more ease into this pose. Is it possible to release some of the tension you might be holding on to? Sometimes that answer is no, and that's okay. Sometimes it's just going to be tight or feel nice and tight. We're all going to release. If you're resting on your back, stay put there because we're about to switch sides. For those of us who have been in our pigeon, let's just come back for a second into tabletop and wiggle and shake those hips. If you're resting on your back, you might actually extend the legs and kind of give them a little windshield wiper. We're going to switch to the other side. So this time it's the left knee that comes forward. We might swing that foot around. And again, you might get a little extra stretch to the front side of the body by walking fingertips back and then folding forward. Number 4, stretch on your back if you choose, crossing your left ankle over, drawing the knee into chest. 10 full breaths in this position. Maybe even a moment to notice how does this side feel compared to the other. Always checking in between sides. It's never a competition. It's just a noticing. Noticing too, if you have to make adjustments for one side, those messages from the body might say, maybe this side is not such a great idea to be here in our pigeon pose, and you need to be resting on your back instead, or the opposite. Perhaps it's easier for this side to come into pigeon pose because of hip structure or some flexibility going on. When you're ready, we're going to go ahead here, rise up into tabletop. If you're resting on your back, whatever feels good, maybe legs up towards the ceiling, maybe you stretch legs to the end of your mat and give it all a good wiggle. I'm going to shift a little bit forward and back just to get out of my shoulders. And then we're all going to meet resting on our backs for a little bit more hip and arm opening. If you happen to have a blanket, sometimes it's nice to place that underneath your head to give your head just a bit of lift. That little bit of lift can help release quite a lot of tension in the front of the chest collarbone area. I'm going to wiggle down here so I'm more on my mat. From here, we're going to take our hands, clasp your hands, pardon me, and reach those knuckles up towards the ceiling. Keeping arms straight, we're going to push knuckles up. And we're going to press shoulder blades in. This is called protraction and retraction. We're going to press and pull. Now, leg position's up to you. I like soft bent knees. That keeps the tug out of for me, my low back, but maybe you like long legs. We're going to do 3 more pushes and pulls here with the arms. And then when you're ready, arms come out into 90-degree elbows. Now, it might be possible to get the whole forearm down. You might find that you have elbows hovering or hands hovering. Some of that actually has to do with tightness through the front of the chest, but also how your shoulder is built. And just take a second to look from side to side. So slowly rocking head one direction and then the other, much like when we started class. While we're resting here, we're getting sort of this passive chest opener. After we fired some of those chest muscles, especially with our lowering to the floor in a plank, we're now going to stretch some of that. When you're ready, draw knees into chest, and we're going to rock across that low back waistband area. So I can hold on the outside of the shins. I can hold on behind thighs. My knees could actually go a little bit wider. I like to go a little bit wider. That accommodates more of my rib cage and also complements more of my hip structure. But you may find knees into chest towards your ears is a little bit more complementary to your hip structure. So we're just rocking side to side. My low back's making a little suction cup each time I'm rocking. And then we're going to take hands on top of each kneecap. And we're really trying to use the strength of our arms here. We're going to separate the knees. We're going to let them circle around and we're going to draw them back together. So almost like little jello legs. They're pretty floppy as I'm using my hands to try to move my legs around. So my knees always separate. They do their own circle and come back together. So a little bit of a hip massage, low back release. We're going to reverse our circle. We'll do 5 in the opposite direction, still using those arms as much as you can to move those knees in their own circle. They always come back together at midline. And then when you're ready, we're going to go ahead and let feet land and extend legs out. So legs go straight out. We have a couple of options here. If you would like to do more of our banana asana, arms can reach overhead. You could use a block or a blanket underneath that left arm. They don't have to reach overhead. Maybe you feel like that's going to create more tension than it releases. You're going to see me leave mine out into a T position. I'm going to walk my heels, however, off to the right side. So my shoulder blades and buns stay on. We're opening this side body, really from your ankle bone, maybe all the way to your pinky finger if arms are reaching overhead. I'm also going to let my gaze go to the right. Now here we're checking in with neck sensation. Sometimes the neck does not like to look from one direction or the other to the side. So maybe it stays more neutral towards the ceiling. We're also getting this area called your gluteus minimus and your gluteus medius. If you're going to put your hands on your hips as if you're frustrated, that's often a source of low back mystery pain. It feels like it's in your bun cheek or in your just above your waistband, or it feels really tight. So we're taking some time to stretch that out while we're also targeting this upper body, torso, shoulder, head, and neck area. Let's walk everything back through center. If your arms were overhead, go ahead and bring them down by your side. And this is going to be a little bit more of a bun squeezing to rock your hips from side to side. So I'm just going to rock hips. And then we'll go to the other side. So heels walk off. If you choose, arms can be overhead, reaching over to that left side, or they can be a little more neutral, reaching out into a T. Gaze goes over the left shoulder if the neck allows. Breathing into that expanded space. We'll come on back through center. Heels walk through center. Hands come down by side. And I'm going to ask you to bend your knees. Bring the heels fairly close to your bottom. We are going to go into our bridge. So if you do have a blanket or something behind your head, go ahead and remove that. Hands are down by your side. We are going to do a particular hand version too, if it works for you. When you're ready, we're going to draw or lift, I should say, lift belly up towards the ceiling, hip bones up towards the ceiling. And if you can, if the shoulder structure allows, we're going to clasp hands underneath our bridge, pressing into your big toes, pushing hips up towards the ceiling. The weight is in your shoulder blades, not in the head. So you may have to lower hips if it feels like it's in the back of the skull versus right between the shoulder blades. We'll wrap our arms around our heart. We're going to melt back down. And a little bit different here. We're going to draw knees in towards the chest, and we're going to see if we can extend our feet, legs up towards the ceiling. And then we're kind of gently rocking legs closer to us. You could do that with knees into chest. You could do that with soft bent knees or straight legs. So what we're inviting here is a version of plow without really putting any taxing difficulty in your neck vertebrae, getting that low back stretch. And at some point, you might find a space where you can grab hold of something to hold them just a little bit closer to you for a few breaths. So I'm hanging on to toes, but you might hold on anywhere behind the legs to just draw in without that rocking sensation. This is good stuff for those long muscles of the back called back extensors. Also a bit of an inversion here for energetic reasons. We always save this for the end of class or near end of class. When you're ready, let's bring feet to the floor, arms into a T. We're going into a twist. So we might have stacked knees dropping over. You might do twisted roots where your left thigh comes on top. You might also just do left knee to chest while right leg is long, drawing it across the body. We're going to go over to that right side. Pardon me. Gaze goes over the left shoulder if the neck allows for that. If the neck allows for you to look over your left shoulder. Trying to say too many words, apparently. Getting this twist through not just that low back, but that upper back and neck structure. If possible, we're just easing into this with the breath. If it feels really tight, you might draw a really deep breath in, hold it for a brief beat or two, and then exhale it out slowly. See if that helps release those legs a little further. When you're ready, knees come back through center, gaze comes back towards the ceiling. Take a little time in between if you need it. Your sides don't have to match. You're going to have maybe a different opportunity here to get a little creative if it feels a little different in the twist. You could do stacked knees, twisted roots, right thigh on top. You could do left leg long, right knee in as you draw across the body. Gaze goes over your right shoulder if the neck allows. I got that phrase right, finally. There might be a space where it feels good to take a very deep inhale, to hold it for a beat or two, and then exhale it out slowly through the mouth. We'll do 2 more breaths here. And then on your next exhale, draw those knees back through center. And if this is okay for your hips, we're going to bring soles of feet together, knees drop out. Sometimes not the space you want to go. And if that's the case, feet go wide and knees drop towards each other. So we could do constructive rest pose or butterfly. At this point, it might also give your hands an opportunity to wrap around your heart. Give yourself a little hug here. Inner thigh release along with a little bit of shoulder release, depending on how that wraparound feels. Sometimes it feels like a little bit of shoulder tension. Two more full breaths here. And then we'll draw those knees together. Happy baby or knees into chest or underarm. So drawing knees into round the back. If you're doing happy baby, we're grabbing hold of what's accessible, anywhere from the knees all the way to the insides or outsides of the feet. You might rock side to side and kick if you're in happy baby. If you've got those knees into chest, you can also rock side to side, giving a little bit of low back massage, a little bit of squishing of that tissue so it becomes more hydrated. Couple of breaths here. And then we're going to release the feet and we're going to begin to find our way into final relaxation. I'm going to come into seated, but I invite you to find any space for yourself that feels relaxing to you. It does not have to look like a yoga pose. If you have props and you do like to rest on your back, you might place something behind your head, also behind your knees. That helps with some of that tug on the low back when you're reclining. Maybe you like legs up the wall. If you have a couch available, you might place your calves on the couch. You may prefer to rest on your side or rest on your belly. What feels best here? If you've cooled down, you just saw me put my sweatshirt on. It's chilly here. If you've cooled down, you might grab a hold of a blanket, your socks, your sweatshirt, your sweater, making sure you're nice, warm, and cozy. I am going to bring you back out of relaxation today. If it's your preference, you want to relax longer, maybe go ahead and turn the video off. Maybe go ahead and log off here live and let yourself rest for as long as you choose. If you're hanging out with me, we're going to be here for about 5 minutes. And we'll walk our way through what it feels like to bring a little bit more ease into the body. So as you found your chosen space, maybe it's helpful to take a few of those deeper inhales and those longer exhales. And we think about those longer exhales settling into the weight of the body where you're connected to the floor. And once those breaths feel complete, just inviting the body to breathe itself, no effort to breath. We invite those longer pauses between thoughts that might lead to a quieting of the chatter of the mind. We let go of all of the doing of our hour's practice, of our morning, and we invite ourselves to just simply be, to be resting here in a sense of ease, and maybe even a sense of well-being. Resting here in that ease and well-being for the next few minutes in silence. Beginning to bring awareness back to the sound of my voice, back to the space that you're resting in. Inviting that deeper inhale, that longer exhale. Beginning to reawaken the body. Maybe start by wiggling fingers and toes. You might circle wrists and ankles. If it feels good, you might stretch arms or draw knees in towards your chest. And in your own way and your own time, we're going to begin to bring ourselves up into a seated position that feels comfortable to you. We're going to do just a little check-in here, noticing a couple of spaces. So if you choose, we're going to look right and left. So recalling at the beginning of class where we might have been able to look towards, how that may have felt sensation-wise, just looking right and left and noting that. And then bring your head back to neutral. I always kind of like to sway side to side or come forward and back almost like a seated cat-cow, just to check in and see how that low back is feeling. And again, we're noting all of this without judgment, just curiosity, just a noticing. It's not good nor bad, it just is. And if this gesture feels okay for you, we're going to place our palms together, resting our thumbs right in front of our heart. May all be well. May all have peace. And may we all be filled with compassion and loving kindness. The light in me is honored and grateful for the light in each of you. I bow to you. Namaste. Thank you all. I'm going to come over and turn off our recording.